Have you ever felt that invisible gaze piercing the back of your neck, as if someone were judging you even when no one is in the room? That strange sensation that freezes you, that makes you think every movement, every word, and every gesture are being recorded in a memory that doesn't belong to you. Let me tell you something. It's not paranoia, it's shame. That silent force Jean-Paul Sartre described as the eye of the other. That eye that reduces you to an object, that turns you into a piece of meat displayed in a shop window. And the worst part isn't that they look at you. The worst part is that you yourself believe in that gaze, even when it doesn't exist. Shame is a ghost that lives in your skin. It slides through your thoughts and cuts your breath at the exact moment you're about to do something different, risky, authentic. You walk into a party and you're no longer yourself. You're the puppet, imagining what others think of you. You step out onto the street and suddenly every step becomes a calculated choreography. Not to walk, but to avoid seeming clumsy. Your entire life turns into a grotesque theater where you're not even the protagonist. You're a supporting actor begging for approval. Now think, how many opportunities have you destroyed because of that poison? How many times have you bitten your tongue to avoid saying what you truly thought? How many silences have you collected because you felt your voice was a nuisance? You don't need to answer, because I know. Too many. And the most fucked up part is that no one remembers those scenes. Others move on with their lives, but you remain chained to that memory as if it were a tattoo on your soul. Sartre nailed it with brutality. Hell is other people. Not because they punish you, but because they taught you to live as if you were their prisoner. You've allowed the judgment of others to become the most efficient prison in history. There are no bars, no chains, and yet you don't move. You call it shyness, you call it prudence, you disguise it as modesty. Number, it's fear. Fear of exposure, fear of being ridiculous, fear of no longer belonging. But here comes the dark part you don't want to hear. That fear doesn't come from outside, it comes from within. You don't need anyone to criticize you because you already do it yourself with surgical precision. You are your own executioner. You raise the guillotine every day and let your head roll just for imagining a judgment that never arrived. That is shame. A crime you commit against yourself with the weapons handed to you since childhood. Look at this coldly. The world isn't watching you. No one is taking notes of your awkwardness. Shame is a mirage, a mental trick that keeps you on your knees. And every time you fall, every time you retreat, the illusion grows stronger. Don't you see? You're sabotaging yourself to please an audience that doesn't even exist. I'll tell you without sugarcoating. Shame is the most ridiculous prison of all. It has no guards, no walls, but it has something worse. Your complicity. You open the door, you feed it, you beg it to stay, because deep down, even though it destroys you, there's something about it that feels familiar. Known pain is more comfortable than unknown freedom. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine moving without that weight. Imagine speaking without measuring every syllable, deciding without fearing ridicule, existing without feeling like every eye in the world is piercing you. That is true freedom, the one Sartre pointed to with unbearable rawness. We are responsible not only for what we do, but also for what we fail to do. And every time you yield to shame, you are choosing to be less than you could be. What nobody tells you is that shame isn't killed with positive speeches or cheap motivational quotes. Shame is destroyed through action, with the first step you take, even with trembling legs, with the first word you spit out, even if your voice breaks, with the first time you decide that ridicule doesn't kill, that judgment doesn't exist, that the gaze of the other is only a reflection of your own fear. Here's where you must wake up. Shame will never again control you once you understand that you're the one who fabricates it. That this monster doesn't live outside, but in your imagination. And the only way to destroy it is to strip it bare. Expose yourself on purpose, fail in public, become the stage you've been running from. Because when you realize the ground doesn't open, that people forget, that the universe doesn't stop because of your mistake, something inside you breaks. And that break is the beginning of your freedom. The real terror isn't being watched. The real terror is discovering you've spent your whole life obeying a jailer who doesn't exist. And when you see it clearly, when you open your eyes and face that illusion, shame will lose its power. Because you can't fear a shadow once you turn on the light. And just when you think you've understood, the most terrifying question appears. If shame is an invention, if the gaze of others is nothing but a reflection of your own insecurity, what remains when it disappears? What remains is the void, and that void is brutal because it confronts you with what you've always wanted to avoid. Yourself. Shame is a disguise, a dense smoke that keeps you from seeing your true face. When you eliminate it, the mask falls, and what emerges is something you can no longer blame on anyone but yourself. That is the freedom Sartre described, and that is also the burden. You are the only one responsible for your existence. There are no witnesses to blame, no spectators to accuse. It's you, with your naked life in your hands. And this is where the part comes in that nobody can stand. Shame is comfortable because it gives you excuses. I didn't do it because I was ashamed. I didn't speak because I felt exposed. I didn't try because I feared judgment. Sounds reasonable, doesn't it? But behind those phrases lies a trap. They make you the victim. The victim role is sweet because you're never at fault. It's always the gaze of others that keeps you from acting. But the truth is that no one is holding you down. You're the one tightening the chains. And when you accept it, when you see you can no longer hide behind that smokescreen, what remains is terrifying. There are no excuses. If you fail, it's your fault. If you stop, it's your choice. If you don't live, it's because you decided not to. That realization paralyzes many, because it's easier to stick with the poison of shame than to swallow the responsibility of freedom. And here's where the mind plays its last card. It fabricates inner voices that sound like others but are yours. The "what will they say" no longer comes from outside, but from within. And if you don't learn to unmask it, you'll keep believing you're fighting against the judgment of others, when in reality, you're fighting against your own echo. Now notice something unsettling. Shame not only limits you, it also turns you into a judge. The more submissive you live, the more you need to watch others. You point fingers, criticize, condemn, and you don't do it because you care about others' lives. You do it because by crushing others, you try to balance the scales of your own oppression. That is the macabre irony. The ashamed becomes the executioner. It's the eternal cycle of shame. First you suffer it, then you spread it, like a virus that needs new hosts to survive. And in the meantime, freedom slips through your fingers. Do you see the vicious circle? Shame breeds more shame. It multiplies in silence, in repressed gestures, in unspoken thoughts. But here comes the crack, the fissure through which light enters. All it takes is one act of rebellion, an unexpected gesture, a decision that breaks the script, a move no one saw coming. Sartre said we are condemned to be free, and it's true. Even if you hide behind shame, you are still choosing. And if you choose to rebel, even if your whole body trembles, even if you feel the earth will swallow you whole, suddenly you discover something wild. People don't rip your skin off. The world doesn't explode, life goes on, and you are still standing. The true power lies in that instant when you do what you feared most. Not because shame disappears forever, but because you learn you can move through it. Next time it will still show up, but not with the same force. You will have stripped it bare. You will have seen that its main weapon was your own fear. And then you'll understand something few dare to accept. Shame doesn't die, but it can be tamed. It becomes a dog tied to your door. It will bark every time you try to leave, but it will no longer bite you. Here comes the most sinister part. Most people never cross that door. They prefer to stay listening to the eternal barking, convincing themselves that outside there's a monster that doesn't exist. They resign themselves to a reduced life. They settle for what's safe. They mutilate themselves in exchange for not feeling the discomfort of freedom. But you are not here for that. You are here because something inside you can no longer stand the prison. You are here because you know there is a price to living under shame, and that price is too high. Your very existence. And it is at this point that I want you to understand the most brutal truth of all. If you decide to face your fear, the people around you will react as if you were attacking them. Because your freedom exposes their submission, your movements remind them that they too could have escaped and didn't. They'll tell you you've changed, that you're arrogant, that you've become different. And they'll be right. You are different because you no longer accept the change they worship. That will be your new hell, not the gaze of others, but the hostility of those who prefer to stay blind. But even that is a small price compared to what you gain, your real life. So listen closely. The fear of ridicule, the feeling of being watched, the invisible chains you thought were real. All of that is smoke. The only trap is your complicity. And when you understand that, when you stare it down without blinking, shame becomes what it always was. A bodiless ghost. The power shifts hands, and in that exact instant, for the first time, you are free. And now that you've seen it, now that you've felt on your skin what it means to rip the mask off shame, the inevitable question appears. What will you do with that freedom? Because here's the most disturbing part, the one nobody ever tells you. Freedom is not a gift. It is a burden that weighs like lead. You are used to blaming shame, blaming the gaze of others, blaming the what will they say. But when those excuses vanish, there's no one left to point at. Only you remain, facing an infinite horizon, and that horizon is as beautiful as it is terrifying. That is the real vertigo. Realizing there are no more chains, that you can walk in any direction, that everything you do from now on will be your own work. And that's when many retreat, because they discover they prefer the safety of chains to the uncertainty of freedom. What about you? Will you retreat, or will you cross that void with your eyes wide open? Shame will always try to drag you back, like an echo that never fully dies. But every time you choose to move despite it, every time you choose to act, that echo loses strength. The world will not remember you for what you kept silent, but for what you dared to say. They won't remember you for the costume you wore, but for the exact moment you decided to tear it off. And now that we've made it this far, before we continue, I want to present the following to you. Our book, The Formula of Awakening, is now available. Do you feel like there's something inside you that wants to awaken, but you don't know where to start? Then I invite you to transform your way of thinking, and with it, your way of living. Discover who you can become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment of this video. Grab your copy now at a great price. With that said, let's continue with the video. And the most amazing thing of all is that when someone sees you moving without fear, you'll awaken in them a dangerous question. What if I could do it too? That's how a different chain begins, one that doesn't enslave, but liberates. Now listen carefully. This video is not entertainment. It is a mirror. What you do after hearing it is your decision. You can close the tab, pretend nothing has changed, and continue being the prisoner of that invisible gaze. Or you can take the first step, even if it's small, even if your whole body trembles, because that step will be the beginning of your true self. And if you do, there will be no turning back. You will never again be able to say you didn't know. So if you've made it this far, if you've felt something stir inside you, I want you to write in the comments a phrase that sums it all up. The ghost is dead. I want to read it and know you're not playing, that you've really seen what's behind that shadow. And subscribe, because what comes next isn't any less intense, it's even more brutal, and you won't want to miss the next revelation. This channel is not made for passive spectators, it's made for those willing to burn their chains. And now I'll say goodbye in a way you might not expect. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine that the gaze you always feared suddenly goes out, as if the entire universe stopped watching you. There are no eyes, no judgment, no shame. Only you remain in absolute silence, master of your own breath. That sensation you just had, that is your new starting point. See you in the next video, if you decide to return from the other side.